One. Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Richard Few, and we're going to be talking about, do we really understand how customers make decisions? I think it's a very, always a topical subject, Richard. As everybody knows, before we get into it, I always ask the question, where can people find you?
Yeah, I guess two best places, salesgeek.co.uk, and then to find me personally, I live in LinkedIn. I spend half my life in LinkedIn. So if you're looking hard enough, you'll find me there.
Okay, excellent. And just before we get started, behind you is, just in case anybody is looking in from around the world, the beautiful building behind you is Blackburn Cathedral, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it is. It's. I think people are quite surprised when they learn where we are, but yeah, we have one of the better views in Blackburn. I think it'd be fair to say.
So let's get in and talk about this. So why don't we understand how buyers make decisions? Because we make decisions all the time.
Yeah.
And we buy stuff.
Yep.
So it's like we are buyers.
Yep.
So why do we, as soon as we put our seller outfit on, do we just forget all that and pitch to everybody?
It's amazing how few sellers, and by sellers I mean salespeople, but also small business owners that are selling and founders that are selling. Yeah, how few sellers actually stop for a minute and think about how they buy stuff and their own transactions and their own customer experiences. And I guess over the last, well, I suppose nearly probably 20 years now, it has amazed me how few people that are selling products actually think about that through their own lens. It's quite scary.
Yeah, because I think that you explain to us how do make people make decisions, because when we did this on the preparation call, it is actually fascinating to go through it and think about some of the psychology behind it.
Yeah, I guess at its core, we primarily make decisions for the avoidance of pain at its absolute core. So Mother Nature equipped us with an incredible survival instinct. We have the best survival instinct of all the animals on the planet, and we're really good at keeping ourselves alive. But that also makes us quite hard to sell to, potentially, as well.
Because the word pain is one of those. It's a bit like the word value, where it's become so overused. Actually, nobody really understands that. People say, I'm giving value. What, you're handing me a brochure? This is well, it tells us all about our company. Okay, right. Yeah. But so people don't understand these things, or people are told this is a value. It's not.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by pain?
Yeah, so I guess pain for me, I suppose I was saying that in the broadest sense of the term, in terms of, we as human beings, even not as buyers necessarily, but as human beings, we make most of our decisions based around the avoidance of pain. That's why people quit things early often. Like, it's why people go out for a long run, they stop early because they'd rather not be in discomfort. And it's the same when we're buying things. So often we will, as a buyer, we'll go to market because we know we have a problem, we know we have an issue, a challenge, something we need to fix, and we go hunting for the solution. And then sometimes as businesses, we need to help people understand that they've got a problem, they've got a challenge, and how to fix it. But more often than not, as buyers, most buyers are aware enough these days that they've got a problem. And I guess that pain ultimately is that problem is costing them time, it's costing them money, it's getting in the way of something for them, either as a business or personally.
And I guess, my background is selling payroll and HR systems and accounting systems. And usually the pain was that you weren't able to pay people properly, or when you did pay people, some people got left out or something like that. That it's that sort of, that was the thing that, how are you doing? The classic thing was multiple employment. So somebody who was a cleaner also was a window cleaner at the same time, and you needed to make sure that they were getting the right tax.
Yeah. Which means, I guess, in that situation, for the customers of that business, it's two problems that you're solving, really. I guess doing it in an antiquated way, I would imagine, is quite time intense, which means that that's expensive for the business. So it's going to be costing them money and time, which is still money in a business sense, but also by not paying their teams and their suppliers on time and in full, then you start to create cultural issues in the business and performance issues in the business, because I don't think there's anything worse you can do as an employer or as a vendor than not pay people on time or in full.
Yes. Yeah,
exactly right. So that's the pain. You're taking that. There's nothing worse than getting a phone call on the first of the month because someone's payment hasn't arrived on the 31st of the month when you're working in that business, and that's not a fun conversation. So in very, very simple terms, that's a painful call for me to take. And if you can stop me having to have those calls on the first day of the month, then I'm willing to pay for that.
But then what happens clearly is that people go out and they buy a product that's, top quadrant of right-hand quadrant of Gartner, and that job done, isn't it?
Yeah, more or less. So again, that it's interesting when people, if people do proactively go to market, which we often do, and I think we live in a world now where buyers are so well educated on what's in the market. The whole kind of marketing and sales funnel, the traditional kind of customer journey, is so different to what it was even as recently as 5 or 6 years ago. And again, even in the last 18 months, AI is changing that. So it was search, then it was social, and now it's AI, and customers are far more educated than they ever have been before. But what's interesting, this is where when people go to market to buy stuff, we are instinctive animals as human beings, and a lot of those decisions, even the B2B ones, are fueled far more by emotion than logic than people give it credit for. And I think we get obsessed as B2B sellers about logic and rationale and giving people compelling logical reasons to buy our stuff because it's cheaper, faster, saves me more money, time, whatever, than actually connecting with people on an emotional level.
Because we're kind of told from an early, once we get into sales, we're quite often given these company presentations to regurgitate. I remember somebody that said that they changed 3 companies and it was the same presentation, but it just changed the logo. And it's all facts, isn't it? We have this slide where the graph goes up, which shows that we're growing, and and all of those things, and it's all fact based, isn't it?
Well, it's all fact based. It's also all about them, or it's all about you and not about them, should I say?
Yeah.
And I think if anybody's watching this who in their first engagement with a customer face to face turns up with a PowerPoint deck, please stop it immediately. There's nothing says you're not important than turning up and talking about yourself for the first half an hour on a slide deck with maps of where the offices are and images of the team and images of the inside of the office. And it's just, no one cares.
The thing is, there is a time and a place for that.
There can be.
Quite often the customer will turn around and say, so how is the company and what's it doing and where you're based and but it's not the time and the place for that. Before you get onto that, Richard, Cav is waving.
Uncle Cav, as he's affectionately known to me.
Okay. So we've got this thing about emotion and fact. So talk us through the difference because you're going to talk us through the difference in the brain, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, at its core, when you look at sort of facts and emotion, and you look at a human brain is a very, very complex thing, and there's lots of different parts of it. But in the interest of simplicity and I guess how we communicate it, certainly to our audiences, there's that logic and then emotion relates to prefrontal cortex has been our logical brain, and then our limbic system, which is our emotional brain. And for anyone that's read The Chimp Paradox, that's the chimp.
Highly recommended book, yes.
Very good book. Yeah, Professor Steve Peters, great, very inspiring guy. And yeah, I guess at its core, most people and also most sales onboarding, right? Most sales reps that listen to this who work in organizations, most of that onboarding training is around here's what we do, here's how to go and sell what we do, and it's generally around here's lots of logical and rational reasons why our customers should buy our stuff. And yet science proves that the emotional side of the brain, the limbic system, the chimp, makes 92% of our daily decisions, and yet none of how we gear up our communication, either through marketing or sales, often at an SME level is geared towards that part of the brain. It's geared towards logical and rational brain, which is only making a relatively small amount of our daily decisions.
So if we've got this imbalance, we're going to market and with all these facts, and actually what we're doing is that we're making decisions based on emotion. What should we be doing differently?
So the greatest weapon in communicating with that emotional brain, for me, is storytelling. It is I think any great salesperson, any good, and you see this with founders, right? It amazes me how, and we meet founders all the time who have no sales background or education at all, but do amazing things launching a brand out the ground just because they go and tell stories about what they're doing to people. They're not these guys aren't trained salespeople. They're just incredible storytellers. And the great thing about telling stories is it creates emotion around the things that you're telling people, which makes it more memorable first and foremost. It makes it easy for people to follow, which is why we also use stories to teach key stage 1 maths as well at school. And what happens when you tell somebody a story? They often put themselves in it. It's a weird kind of trick. So they put themselves in your story and they'll try and line it up to something that's happened in their lives. And now, if you think about this psychologically, they've put you and them in this nice little story together, and you're now on that journey together. So, there's a connection there straight away, which kind of puts you in the same room together. So I think storytelling is the primary skill, and then there are some other things as well, which I think COVID and Zoom calls and stuff have made it harder to connect with people's limbic systems. Zoom calls and Teams calls are efficient, but nowhere near as impactful as meeting people in person. The 3 primary differences between a Zoom call and a face-to-face meeting: there's no eye contact. We're on this now. I'm looking at you on my screen. I'm not looking at you through my lens. So we're not actually making eye contact right now, even though we sort of it looks like we are, but we're not. And second and third to that is there's no, I suppose you kind of lose a bit of depth of field vision through cameras as well. And then the third thing is, which a lot of people miss on, is our good friend oxytocin, which is a chemical that our body gives us a nice little dose of when we touch other people through handshakes and hugs and stuff. And that's kind of our connection chemical. So all of that combined with the storytelling is how human beings connect with each other ultimately. And, people tend to buy from people they connect with.
Yes. And, there's the famous saying, isn't it? We get to know, like, and trust somebody. So how do we actually get to know, like, and trust people?
Well, I guess in order for them to get to know you, they need to see you first.
Yeah.
And I think whenever I look at that kind of concept of know, like, and trust, I always add on see as well. And I think seeing can now be, that could be, I suppose, for a salesperson through networking, through LinkedIn, through social media. And actually, in many ways, it's never been easier to be seen. It's never been easier to connect with and add value to a community and a network. But it needs to be done well. And that also means that I think it needs to be done with a level of consistency, because I think, the trust comes from feeling familiar to people. And I think if you say you are something, you have a set of values, you have to then live those values through your behaviors, and our behaviors are those living expressions of our values. And I think what we're amazing at as humans is if someone says they're something and then we pick up that they're behaving in a way that isn't that, I think we quite instinctively go, something's not right here. And I think we've all got people on the network, Tim, that we've met several times that you've got no meaningful reason to say don't like them, but you're not in a massive rush to go and have a coffee with them, if you know what I mean.
And it's back to our limbic brain, isn't it? Which is we were out on the Serengeti, and our biggest job in the day was to stop being eaten by a saber-toothed tiger.
Yes.
And you'd see someone coming across on the horizon. You would know before the person got to you whether you like them or not.
Yes.
You haven't even spoken to them.
Yeah.
Because we have this, as you said, this survival instinct. So we can see people out there and go, I don't like that person. I do like that person. And it comes from in here.
isn't it incredible how we keep getting told to not be judgmental as humans, and yet it's kept us alive for
It's kept us, yeah,
several thousands of years.
yeah. I did one of these with somebody who actually makes a living about telling people about not using not to use biases, and he said you can't not use biases. There's 200 of them, and he said you just fall over and die.
That's true.
So so to summarize where we are, so we get pain. The best way to connect with people is to be seen. The best way to do that is through storytelling.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is that, in effect, what's happening is that but when we make a decision, so we buy emotionally through the gut.
Yeah.
We then justify it with facts, don't we?
Yeah. So there's two things that happen often once the limbic system has gone green light. And the thing is with the limbic system, like all of our written and verbal communication comes from the logical brain and prefrontal cortex. So there's a connection that goes on there between the two. But it kind of like the limbic system goes green. And then what happens after that is two things, really. One is confirmation bias. And it's amazing how many times you will see, even in the most professional B2B settings, how a buyer can then just see the positive in everything that organization or that service or that person does, versus if they've gone red light on someone, how they find it, they hunt for reasons to not do it. So confirmation plays a role, and so does then, I guess, a level of post-rationalization. So we have to make sense of these things, right? Because at some point we have to explain our decision to somebody else.
Yeah.
And that could be a colleague. It could be your partner at home when you turn up with a new car. And again, going back to survival instincts, one of our biggest fears is being cast out from the troop or from the tribe. So
loneliness,
yeah, so loneliness. So what we don't want to do is just go, oh yeah, I spent 60 grand on that thing because it felt good, or I've turned our entire IT infrastructure upside down and put a new one in because it just seemed like a warm.
I like the salesman
thing to do. Yeah, exactly right. You can't do it. So you'll post rationalize it, come up with some logical stuff. And I think that thing there is the root cause of this issue, because when salespeople get rejected and let down, the buyer gives them the logical reason why they didn't buy it, not the real reason why they didn't buy it. So we condition ourselves over decades of being salespeople that these are the real reasons why people do and don't buy it, but it's misleading. But we have to. The FD has to give a logical reason why they bought the expense management system or the payroll system. They can't just go, oh, Tim was a right nice dude, and it just felt warm and fuzzy from the minute I walked in the door. So here we are.
So I just wanted to mention Aaron Sussex, because he said he's enjoying this.
Awesome.
And we've only got a couple of minutes. But tell me about loneliness and consensus.
Yeah, so I think loneliness. I was watching something a couple of years ago now, but they've been doing like a happiness study for over 100 years. It's passed through 4 generations of scientists, and the number one thing that we require as human beings is the opposite of loneliness in order to survive and be happy and healthy. And actually, the horrible truth is, people that are lonely die sooner. It's that serious. It's that kind of primal to us to be connected. So we don't like loneliness. Which means we want to exist in tribes. That's built into us. But that also then means that, like you say, consensus. I think people underestimate, certainly in the B2B space, how many people are involved in decision-making processes from the buyer's side. So I think a lot of the time, as a salesperson, I've seen this as a sales leader going through people's pipelines, and it's like, okay, who are we in touch with? Oh yeah, the decision maker's Bob. Like, okay, who else? Oh no, Bob's making the decision. I'm like, okay, is he? Actually, Bob's sat in the room with 6 other people right now. And if your competition have touch points with those 5 other people as well as Bob, they're probably going to get the consensus in the room, because Bob doesn't want to be cast out from his tribe. So he's listening to the other 5 people. And often salespeople don't have enough touch points in their business. The average is nearly 6 people involved in the buying side of a B2B decision, and most salespeople are unfortunately too lazy to find out the other 5.
Yeah, one of our clients said they have 100.
I can quite believe it.
They're a software supply chain software vendor, and they reckon they have 100 people in the stakeholders that could be part of the sale.
I get, I suppose, as the CEO of this business, I get sold to quite regularly, and I enjoyed that because I learned from it. But it amazes me how many people go, "Oh, as the founder of Sales Geek, you must be interested in X." And I'm like, it's not really. I've got people in my team that do that for me. But also, what they don't see is when we have leadership team meetings, on those agenda points will be some of the investments that we're making. And I've got one person bringing that into the room, and no one else in that room has been engaged with by the sellers typically.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, it's strange. I get people selling because you've got to sell at the top, haven't you? It's like, no, I don't make decisions on this.
No, I know.
Why would I waste my time on that? Oh, and then the salesperson goes away. It's like there's other people in the organization that would, do that. But you've got to sell at the top.
But I think again, the one of my gripes for sales people and organizations is they pride themselves on being product experts rather than customer experts. And if they were customer experts and knew how the inside of your organization run, they'd do a better job of speaking to the right people in the right way.
Yeah. So Jason Kingston basically said, absolute edutainment. Love
that's the word of the day.
Jason, you've obviously made a word up there. Thank you. Richard, it was fantastic talking to you today. Had to rush, kind of feels like a rush, but it's I think we've got everything out. Remind people where they can get hold of you.
Yeah, LinkedIn is definitely the easiest place to get hold of me. There's not many people with my surname, so I'm pretty easy to find.
It's Richard Few, F-E-W.
Yeah, so yeah, drop me a connection request, drop me a message, and it'd be great to connect.
Okay, Richard, thank you so much for coming on. I think it's just such an important subject, isn't it? Which we always forget about in sales, because we're always about the facts and the numbers, and we forget about the